Alright, so we're going to see how this goes today. We're going to be talking about midline, amplitude, and period for two different types of sinusoidal functions. One, the sine of x graph, and the other, the cosine of x graph. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So those are your two basic graphs. What I'd like you to do in your journal, I would like you to write, and you could do function notation if you want. I'm just going to put y equals sine of x, and y equals the cosine of x. That's what we're going to be talking about right now. Okay. Now, in each of these, you have a midline, an amplitude, and the period. Okay. So they're going to be the same in each of them, but they look a little bit different. So let's go ahead and go over to Desmos and take a look at it. So right now, what we're going to do, I'm just going to simply type in the sine of x. Now, you'll notice that it just goes on forever because when you're dealing with the unit circle, when it graphs it, it just continues to go around and around and around the unit circle. And I'll do a little animation here in just a second. So here's a little animation of the sine of x graph. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click the play. So you'll notice as the unit circle goes around, I'll kind of pause it. As it goes from 0 all the way around to pi, it goes all the way up to 1 and down to back to 0. And it goes all the way around, and now right there, that has completed one unit circle. So it's completed its period because theta has gone all the way around from 0 pi all the way to 2 pi, or from 0 degrees to 360 degrees. All right, so I'm going to go back one more time. Let's take a look at that. All right, let's follow it along. There it goes to 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 degrees, and 360 right there. It goes once again 90, 180, also known as pi, 270, and all the way back up to 360. And it just keeps going forever and ever and ever. So that's the sine of x graph. All right. So we're going to make a little table that goes with it. Pause it right here. Perfect. Now we're going to go ahead and make a table right here for you. So this would be a good graph to put into your journal. If you don't notice it, right here, that's a 1. And right here is -1. All right. Now I'm going to put a little tick mark right here because right here we are at half of a pi, also known as pi over 2. Right here we are known as 3 pi over 2. And the period of this, I'll kind of highlight it right there, all the way through that right there. Bam, that's the period. That length is 2 pi. So right here, I want you to understand the period. I need to do a better job of writing here. See if I can have better handwriting. There we go. There we go. That's a little bit better. The period is equal to 2 pi. All right, because it starts here and it finishes its cycle right there. All right. Now, the amplitude goes from right here at the midline all the way. Like, what the heck is a midline? So let me go back real quick and take a look at, this is a really good graph right here in the Khan Academy. All right. And now our sine of x graph looks like this. It starts at 0, goes to 1, goes down and back up. The midline is what splits that wave or that graph perfectly right in two. The amplitude is from the midline to the highest point, or from the midline to the lowest point. That's what we call the amplitude. Now, the amplitude is always going to be positive, okay? And then you'll notice right here, here's the period. It starts here and it finishes there. That's the period of the graph. And so those are the three features. All right, what are the three features? The period. All right. the midline, and the amplitude. Now the period of all sine and cosine, all right, their parent functions is going to be 2 pi. The midline will always be y equals 0, and the amplitude will always equal 1. Okay, so if we go back to our animation right here, you can see it goes from the midline right here at y equals 0, also known as the x-axis, all the way up to 1 and all the way down to -1. Now, next thing we're going to do is I'll take that off. We're going to look at the cosine of x graph. So look where the cosine starts. Ready? All right, put that right there. Let's go back. Oh, kind of gave it away. There we go. So you'll notice the cosine of x graph starts right. Oh, that's a little bit too far in. Didn't mean to zoom that in. Let me zoom out just a bit. Gotta figure out what I did there. And I'm not sure what I did, but I'm just going to go ahead and hit the play. Click on the cosine animation. There we go. All right, here we go. Goes to 90 degrees, also known as pi over 2, then pi, then 3 pi over 2, and all the way back to 2 pi. And boom, you're done with one cycle right there. That's the period. Notice the period is 2 pi, except it starts at 1. So in the sine of x graph, you'll notice it starts at 0, goes up to 1, then back to 0, then down to -1, then back to 0. The cosine of x graph starts at 1, goes through 0, goes down to -1, and then finishes right back up at 1. Okay. Then it does it again. And then it will reset. There we go. Just keeps going on forever and ever and ever. All right. So this is just your, it says alpha, but it's your theta, it's your angle that as it goes all the way around the circle. All right. It's just going around it. It's creating your cosine of x graph. All right, so I'm going to stretch it all the way out just to 2 pi, and we're going to stop it right here, and we're going to make a table. And we'll also make a table for the sine of x graph. So what I want you to do, just make a little table in your journal. We'll just call this x and y. All right. I'm also going to draw a unit circle to go along. There's the unit circle right here, but I'm just going to make another unit circle to go along with it. So let's think about this. Right here, right. It's going to be important for you to look at the ordered pairs. We got 1 and 0. And remember, this is at 0 pi. Also, all the way around, it's known as 2 pi. Right here is at 0 and a 1, also known as pi over 2, or in degrees, we call it 90 degrees. Right here, we're at -1, 0. Right down here, we're at 0, -1. Now, in terms of pi, we are at pi, also known as 180 degrees in degrees. Here we're at 270 degrees, but that's known as 3 pi over 2 radians. And right here, we're either at 0 degrees, also known as 2 pi, which is 360. So I want you to take a look at this as we're making this graph. Just remember, the cosine of theta in the unit circle is always the x value over the r value. It's always the x over the r. All right, so here we go. Let's start right here. Right there is we're at right here at 0. what is the x value when theta is 0, which is basically 0 degrees? My x value is a 1, okay? So when I'm at 0 degrees, all right, when I'm at 0 degrees, I'm just going to put 0 pi. I'm at 0 pi. My y value is actually at a 1. Just remember, cosine is x over r, all right? If you've forgotten what that is, I'm just going to really go over it real quick. Cosine of theta is the x value over the r value. Sine of theta is the y value over the r value. And if I did want to find the tangent of theta, that's the y value over the x value in the unit circle. Just remember, in the unit circle, your r value is always 1, just so you know, because that's what they call it, the unit circle. All right, so here we go. Now at pi over 2, which is right here, what's my x value? All right, my x value is 0. So right now, my y right here, so 0 over 1, if I use this property here, 0 over 1 is still 0. Well, check it out. Right here is pi over 2. So at pi over 2, I'm at a 0. Well, where am I right here at pi? What's my x value at pi? At pi, it's at a -1. So -1 over 1 is still -1 if we're using x over r. Right here, when I get to 3 pi over 2, when I'm at 3 pi over 2, once again, my x value is at 0. Well, 0 divided by 1 is still 0. So at 3 pi over 2, my y value is at 0. And then finally, we get all the way back here to 2 pi. And all the way back here at 2 pi, I am back at a 1. Right here, I'm at the x value is 1. So it's basically, you'd say 1 over 1. And that's how you do it. So once again, what's the first thing we do? We do, right here at 0 degrees, we do 1 over 1, and we get a 1. Then what do? We're at 0 over 1 at pi over 2, and that gives us a 0. Then, one more time, where are we at over here at pi? We're at -1 over 1, which gives us a -1. And that's kind of how you do it as you're working through. So this is your table. Oh, didn't mean to do that. I had to do a different shape. There we go. So here's your table right there that deals with the cosine of x. If we go back to the sine of x, right here, let's make a quick little table. Won't take long. You're like, yeah, whatever. Taking forever, man. Just trying to help you guys find connections. So put x and y, and this one, just remember, we're dealing with the sine of theta, which is the y value over the r value. So let's take a look at this, and we'll make another unit circle. There we go. Here's my unit circle. Let's start right there. So right here, that point is 1, 0 on the unit circle. There's my x value, there's my y value. Well, if the sine of theta is always y over r, well, when I'm at 0 degrees, what's my y value? 0. So it's 0 over 1. So if I put 0 over 1, I get 0. And that's why I'm right here. 0, 0. So at 0 pi, I'm at 0. But as soon as I go to pi over 2, which is right here, there's my pi over 2. What's that ordered pair? That's 0 and a 1. So when I reach pi over 2 right there, that's pi over 2, I'm at a 1. When I get back to pi right here, I'm at -1 comma 0. What's my y value again? 0. So at pi, I am back to 0. And you can see it. 0, there I am, 0, 0. At pi over 2, I get all the way up to a 1. At pi, I'm back to 0. When I get all the way down to 3 pi over 2, there's 3 pi over 2. What's that ordered pair? I'm at 0, -1. What's my y value? -1 over 1. So right there I am. So at 3 pi over 2, I'm at -1. And then eventually you get all the way back here. Just remember, this is the start and that's the finish. All right, so right here we get all the way back here, and so we get back to what? Back to 0. So there you are. And I'll highlight something that's going to be important. Notice every single terms of pi, what's the y value? 0. So basically every single time you're at a pi in the sine of x graph, the y value is always going to be at 0. When I go to the cosine of x graph, let's see here, go over to the cosine of x graph. Right here, where are the zeros? They're not at pi, they're at halves of pi. That's where the y values are at 0. All right. At increments of 0 pi and 2 pi gets you to a 1. All right, so when it goes 0 pi, 2 pi, if somebody says, what's it at 4 pi? Yeah, it's at 1. What's it at 6 pi? It's still at 1. So at increments of 2 pi, that's where it goes from 1 back to 1. So those are your basic two. Like I said, what do you start out with? The sine of x and the cosine of x. All right, so in the next video, we just talked about sine of x and cosine of x. The next video, we're going to talk about midline, amplitude, and period, and how to use those in the Khan Academy.